Hi there, fifth graders. Welcome to Ready, Set, Read, Research, and Writing. This is Ms. Turner here, and I'm so glad that you guys are with me. I hope everyone is doing well. I would love to hear something new that you've been trying since you've been at home. At home meaning not going out. One new thing that I have been doing is having to figure out how to work out at home and not like going to the gym or anything like that. So I've been doing some yoga workouts from the computer. I've been doing some strength workouts, and sometimes I use the weights that my family has, but sometimes those are too heavy, and so I have to use like canned goods. So that's a new thing I've been trying. What's a new thing you've been trying since you've been at home? Awesome, great. I love hearing about these new things that you guys have been working on. So we're about to get started on our week 5, day 4 lesson. What we're going to be talking about today is choosing appropriate evidence to support our thesis statement. So last week we spent some time talking about how you build a thesis statement out of your general specific thesis statement, to build your introduction paragraph. And today we're going to talk about choosing appropriate details to support that, but we will still have some time for the general specific thesis statement. Before we get started, make sure you have a pen or a pencil. Make sure you have your week 5 packet, and make sure that you have some scratch paper. All right, I'm going to give you about a minute to get those things, and then we will meet on the slide. All right, last week when we came together, we talked about the steps for writing a thesis for your introduction paragraph. The first thing you do is you write a general statement related to the topic. Then you write a specific statement related to the topic that gets a little bit more into the who, what, when, where, and why. And then finally, you are very specific when you write your thesis statement that guides the rest of your essay. The example that you watched me give last week was, President's Day is a holiday honoring past presidents of the United States. On the third Monday in February, we especially acknowledge 2 of our greatest presidents. All Americans should recognize the achievements of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln on President's Day. We put these together to create the introduction statement, or the introduction paragraph. From the introduction paragraph, you move into the body paragraphs of your essay, where you're explaining more of the details and the idea that you presented in the thesis. Finally, you have your conclusion, where you are able to restate your thesis and wrap it all up. Today, I'm going to have you practice again using the general specific thesis formula. I have included all steps for writing a thesis to form your introduction paragraph on the slide. You should go into your packet and find the section that looks like this. You should be writing an essay that answers the prompt. You have read 2 texts describing Thomas Edison's work with the light bulb. Was Thomas Edison's work of providing safe and electric light to people at home inventive or innovative? So you should be planning your introduction paragraph at this time. I'm going to start the timer. You have 2 minutes to plan. It is okay if you need more time later, or if you want to pause the video now. All right, great job working on your writing. So we're going to take some time to review. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and each time I ask a question, I want you to look at your work and see if your work meets this criteria. Does your introduction paragraph have at least 3 sentences? Okay. Does your first sentence include background knowledge about inventions, innovations, and Thomas Edison? All right, great. Is your second sentence a specific statement that goes a little bit more into detail about the who, what, when, where, and why of the prompt? And finally, does your third sentence state your thesis to address the topic in the prompt and create a pathway for you to write the rest of your essay? Awesome. Then we are ready to go. So when we write, the introduction paragraph is only step 1. So we want it to be strong because it's the first thing our reader reads, but then we actually need to build on that throughout the rest of our essay. So what we're going to spend some time talking about right now is how do we choose good text evidence to give us strong details that make our argument compelling or interesting to read. So I'm going to turn this off. You're going to meet me at another slide, and we're going to keep talking with the President's Day example before you get some time to practice about Thomas Edison and whether he was more of an innovator or an inventor. All right, I'll see you on the slide in just a couple seconds. All right, we just discussed how writing the introduction paragraph is really only step 1. Now we take what we said in our thesis and we look for details in the text that support the thesis that we can use as our details. So my thesis says all Americans should recognize the achievements of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. I'm now going to read through the text and see what in the text supports that and that I can use as a detail. It says, Abraham Lincoln is one of the most respected presidents in United States history. He was the 16th president of the United States. He led the country during the American Civil War. This was one of the hardest times in America's history. Lincoln was born in Kentucky. He had a very hard time when he was young. His mom died when he was 10 years old. His family moved several times. Lincoln could not go to school for very long. He had to work instead to help his family make money. Even though Lincoln had been through bad times, he loved to be funny and tell jokes. Lincoln was also known for being honest. People called him Honest Abe. Now, I see a lot of great things in here about Abraham Lincoln, but I'm thinking we're talking about President's Day and celebrating him on his presidency, so I've highlighted the most important detail about his presidency, which is he led the country during the American Civil War, one of the hardest times in America's history. We'll talk about how I use this in my planning later on, but this detail is important and something that I think should be included in my essay. Now, it's not all about Abraham Lincoln. We also have to include some details about George Washington. So it wouldn't make sense if I went through my planning and only included a detail about celebrating Abraham Lincoln's achievements. So now, again, thinking about our thesis, all Americans should recognize the achievements of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to read these paragraphs and figure out what could I include from this paragraph or from these paragraphs in my details that support we should be celebrating them. Washington was born on February 22, 1732 in Virginia. He had little schooling, but taught himself many important skills. As a young man, he became a soldier and fought for the British in the French and Indian War. Later, however, Washington and others became angry at the way England was ruling its American colonies. In 1776, the colonists declared their independence from the British. General Washington led his troops in the fight against the British. In 1783, America won the war and became free from England. Washington retired as general and returned to his farm in Virginia. Again, I'm thinking, what about George Washington's presidency or his fight for the presidency makes it so that we should celebrate him on President's Day? As interesting as I think it was that he had little schooling and taught himself many important skills, that doesn't support that he was a good president that we should fight or that we should celebrate specifically on President's Day. So I highlighted General Washington led his troops in the fight against the British. In 1783, America won the war and became free from England. And of course, we know that after that, George Washington became our very first president. So, when you are going through and looking in your text, you should be looking for details that supports whatever you said in your thesis statement. As a reminder, your prompt is, was Thomas Edison's work of providing safe and electric light to people at home inventive or innovative? So you take these two texts that you have read in week 4 and now in week 5, and you're trying to find evidence that supports whether he was inventive or innovative. Now, you're probably sitting at home and thinking to yourself, well, Ms. Turner, I can't remember the difference between those two words. Not to worry. Invention versus innovation. An invention is when you create something completely brand new. You start from scratch, you put it together, and you create something that's never been created before. When you innovate or are an innovator or there's an innovation, you're adding on to something that has already been created, but you're making it better. So as you're going through these two texts today, you're thinking, did Thomas Edison create something completely new? Or did he just build on something that already happened? And you're finding evidence that supports this. So here's what's going to happen. Right now, you're going to have the next 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, to go ahead and read through these texts and try and find evidence that supports whether Thomas Edison was inventive or innovative. Remember to underline or highlight or keep track of whatever you mark in some way so that you'll be able to go back and find it later. I'm going to go ahead and turn my mic off and set a timer. Again, feel free to pause the video or come back to this later if you need more time. All right, now that you've gone through the text and you've found some details that support your thesis statement, it's time to start putting them into the organizers. Now, remember, you can choose option A or option B. You should not do both of them. So I went ahead and gave an example of both based on the details I found. So in my first one right over here, I put Americans should recognize George Washington's achievement of leading troops to defeat the British. So this is what I found in George Washington's article and is the main focus of what my first paragraph is going to be, still supporting the thesis of we should especially celebrate George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. My second detail is again that detail I found about Abraham Lincoln. Americans should recognize Abraham Lincoln's leadership in successfully guiding the country through the Civil War. So these are effectively my topic sentences for each of these body paragraphs that I can add some details to. Finally, if you want to write a third body paragraph, you could say for a topic sentence, or I said for my third topic sentence, all Americans should celebrate that Washington and Abraham went through challenging times but still led our country well. And then I would support with more details from the text. Of course, you guys have a lot more text than what I showed you of mine because mine was just an example. I wrote the same 3 topic sentences over here. The only reason I did both was to show you an example of each one. Remember, you should not be doing each of these. Again, this is your topic sentence. These are some of the details or evidence that you're going to use to explain it. And that's how you can organize your writing. So in a couple seconds or in a couple of minutes, you're going to get an opportunity to try this on your own, choosing option A or option B. Make sure as you're writing that you look at the student-friendly checklist that I'm going to read right now. You should state your opinion and use evidence that supports your opinion. Remember, you're trying to tell us, is Thomas Edison an inventor or is he an innovator? You should introduce your topic clearly and write your reasons in order so they make sense to your reader. You should choose specific words and details that would make the reader agree with the reasons that support your opinion. You should write specific facts and details for each reason to support your opinion. You should connect your reasons together with transitions and linking words, such as also, another, because, specifically, and consequently. You should write several sentences or a part that concludes your writing. You should write a concluding statement or section that restates your opinion. You should write an ending that makes the reader agree with your opinion. You should use capital letters correctly when writing your sentences. You should use punctuation to separate an introduction word or phrase from the rest of the sentence. You should use commas to separate reasons and details in a series. You should spell grade level words correctly and use resources to help you find words that you cannot spell. Please take this time right now to practice writing your outline. That will help you when you write your essay after this video. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put a timer up on the screen. As you know, you can use the full time or you can choose to stop the video and finish your outline, or you can come back to this later. You guys got this. All right, great job, 5th grade. I loved working with you on your writing today. So before we finish, I want you to take a couple seconds to review. Kind of like we did after the general specific thesis statement, I'm going to ask some questions and I want you to think, does my writing do this? All right. First, does your plan or does your thesis answer the writing prompt or the question? Awesome job. I love seeing you guys look back. Does it include the general specific thesis formula? Awesome. Did you include evidence and details from the text? And can you check all the boxes on the checklist? Great job checking that writing. All right, and as we've been talking about, you should be taking time each day to read. On Tuesday when we were together, I read to you the blurb from Jason Reynolds' book, Look Both Ways, that I hope some of you have been able to check out on public library, or maybe you actually bought it from a local bookshop. Today I'm going to talk about another one of my favorite books to read, and it is Holes. Some of you might have already read this and maybe have even seen the movie, but if you haven't, let me read this little blurb for you. Stanley Yelnats is under a curse that began with his no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather, and has since followed generations of Yelnatses. Now, Stanley has been unjustly sent to a boys' detention center, Camp Green Lake, where the boys build character by spending all day, every day, digging holes exactly 5 feet wide and 5 feet deep. There is no lake at Camp Green Lake, but there are an awful lot of holes. But what could be buried under a dried up lake? Stanley tries to dig up the truth in this inventive and darkly humorous tale of crime and punishment and redemption. If that made you interested, you should go check out Holes by Louis Sachar at either the public library or your favorite local bookstore. He also has a lot of other great books. All right, remember, take some time to read every day. Try something new. Know that your teachers love you and miss you. Can't wait to see you again. All right, I'll see you next week. Bye.